Inspired talks of Swamiji. Pranam mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. In Inspired Talks, we have been discussing what Swamiji had talked on 9th July 1895. It was a Tuesday. Actually, there is so much of philosophy involved in it. So we have to kind of explain things. And those of you who are not deep into it, not accustomed to it, will definitely find these things pretty complicated both ways. If you read directly, you will not be able to fathom the real depth of what Swamiji is talking. And when I try to explain in my limited way, you might find it quite complicated because you are not used to it. Swamiji has been essentially talking about Shankaracharya's approach to the Vedas, Upanishads, and Advaita. That means his outlook towards spirituality, how he looked at the world. Because, as Swamiji said in the previous class we had ended with, undifferentiated consciousness, when differentiated, becomes the world. This is a very, very, very important statement. Consciousness is undifferentiated. When you see it as differentiated, this is world. Our sages and philosophers used different examples like gold and jewelry, clay and toys, just to give us an idea of what is this undifferentiated and differentiated. My own understanding after being in this field for so many years is that no amount of reading and no amount of listening can really help you. Believe me. I mean, if you're ready to believe me. Studying is very, very, very important because that's how information comes. After that, pattern making has to be done by you yourself. Unless you yourself start making those patterns, and there are two ways of making those patterns. One is through discussions. Now, the present day culture is so shallow, you can't find people with whom you can discuss this. Second option is to write down. You can write down your thoughts. Keep writing for some years. Go back and see if you are still consistent about it. If you are not yet consistent about it, it means that your understanding is not yet clear. A time will come when you will see that your thoughts have started becoming consistent. So this world and Brahman, God, Atman, they are not different. There is a sameness. Only when you see it as undifferentiated, it is God. And when you see it as differentiated, it is the world. This is where we had ended. Now from there, Swamiji moves on to Buddhism. Now, please keep this in mind that whatever Swamiji was talking was not taken down entirely. So sometimes you may feel that sudden jump or sudden jerk. That is understandable. Buddhism, one of the most philosophical religions in the world, spread all through the populace, the common people of India. Now, apparently, this is a very simple statement. Buddhism is one of the most philosophical religions in the world. Indeed, in fact, you'll find that there is a resurgence of Buddhism in the Western world. Western people, they tend to pick up some idea and start jumping about it. That is in nature. That's in their nature. it becomes a fad, it becomes a fashion. When they take up something, everyone is talking about that. Nowadays, Buddhism is in fashion. However, when you look at Buddhism, the way we find it, rather the way it has been handed down to us, you'll find that it's extremely philosophical religion. Now, when we talk about extremely philosophical religion, one of my friends in Delhi, she read my book, The World of Religions. And then she was impressed and she said that, look, I am so impressed, she was telling, with Buddhism. I want to become a Buddhist. I pointed out that just try to understand the vastness of Hinduism. Then you will realize that Buddhism is just a very small part of Hinduism. Anyway, when Swamiji is saying this, that the most philosophical religion, compared to any other religion, not compared only with the Hinduism, what exactly Swamiji meant or what exactly it is. See what happens. Those of you who have been listening to these talks for a very long time would remember that when a pure mind, really pure mind, goes into the depth of deep meditation, meditates, when you meditate, you silence the mind. What is meditation? Meditation means silencing the mind, nothing else. Simple. What is samadhi? Stillness of mind. There is silence, there is stillness. When you are meditating, it is silence. And when you reach the state of samadhi, it is stillness, complete stillness. So now we have two approaches after that. One is the great sages who reached that state, and there they experienced that spiritual truth, and they taught that to their students, to their followers. And second approach is God himself came down or sent his messenger. For example, if you look at Judaism, Abraham is one of those persons who reached that high. And when you look at Jesus, he was son of God, sent from the heaven. Prophet Muhammad, he was a messenger sent by Allah. Hinduism is one religion where you find both types. We have sages, we also have God coming down. And in Hinduism, God doesn't send any messenger. God comes down himself. God doesn't send any son, he comes himself. Because it's a precious religion. If the big boss himself is paying attention to some problem, it means that the thing is important. Usually, big boss deputes somebody to look after some problem. For example, we have the prime minister. There is some problem, he might ask one of his deputies. But if prime minister himself comes down, it means that issue has to be very important. So in Hinduism only you find that God himself comes down. And I'm not joking, at times I joke, but this is a very serious thing. Because there are such spiritual gems, priceless spiritual gems, that can be maintained only by God, not by sages. That is in Hinduism. Now, whether God comes himself or these are the realizations of these sages, in either case, their words become scriptures and they are extremely disorganized. Look at anything. For example, those of you who might have listened to our talks on the Vedas. We have one series on Hinduism on YouTube, around 40 lectures on Hinduism. There we have explained some of those mantras, and you find that it's like heaping of gems. You collect lots of gems. Suppose you just think of a diamond mine and where you find diamonds in abundance. Those of you who might have read Adventures of Sindbad find that Sindbad once landed in one of those valleys where there were pearls in abundance. You go collect those pearls and heap them. The Vedas are just like that. Upanishads, a little more coherence is there. Gita, coherence increases. Ultimately, these books are just like priceless pudding. You eat from anywhere and they will taste the same. But same thing happens with Christianity also. Islam also. Buddhism doesn't go that way. Because what Lord Buddha said, that definitely is there in Dharmapada and all. But the way Buddhism has come to us, 4 Noble Truths, 8 steps, things like that, they are very well organized. And this organization is in such a way that you can, if you ask a person to go through Buddhism, he can begin with the beginning and can be led to the highest. Those of you who might have read my book, The World of Religions, might have noted this thing about Buddhism. Extremely philosophical. Now, this is a very serious problem with every other religion. Because in every other religion, spirituality has been simply heaped. Spiritual truths have been simply heaped. I know because I have gone through them, I know. In Hinduism, the different approaches towards God, for example, there is Bhakti and there is Vedanta, they all try to organize it. But they really did not succeed. At least the books did not become popular. So we have quite a few books on Bhakti Sutras, and on Vedanta also we have books like Vedanta Sar and Panchadashi and Vivek Chudamani, but no, they don't work. They are known as Prakaran Grantha, stepping stones to Vedanta. Only book that succeeded in creating a true philosophy of religion is Raj Yoga, something that we have been discussing. Those of you who are interested may listen to those talks on Raj Yoga. There also approach is slightly different, but it actually does not matter. And that way, Raj Yoga addresses issues far more clearly, far more elaborately than Buddhism does. Because Buddhism, the way it comes to us, gives a very clear picture, but it doesn't get into elaboration. For that, you have to go to other books. And then again, they become like Hinduism. However, the popular idea of Buddhism that we have, if you take any handbook on Hinduism, on Buddhism, you'll find that it's a systematic work. And I have a feeling, I have not read it anywhere, this is my understanding, and every time I apply my mind, I know I might be wrong, because when it comes to higher things, we, the ordinary mortals, must not apply our minds. So I never apply my mind when it comes to spiritual things. There, I strictly focus what the scriptures say. In ordinary things, I apply my mind and I might be wrong. And it is that Patanjali wrote Raj Yoga sometime in 3rd century BC. That's what the scholars say. And I have a feeling that Patanjali must have felt that the way Buddhism is organized in such simple terms, that his own outlook in philosophy, which was yoga, needed to be organized. And that might be one of those impetus. That might be one reason why Patanjali did it. But what he has done is a masterpiece. However, yoga is not a religion. yoga is just a path, because you just need to add one small word, one small sentence here and there, and then yoga can be taken up by any religion. Hindus can take it, Muslims can take, Christians can take, and Buddhism is, of course, mostly about yoga. When it comes to a complete religion, it is Buddhism, which is an extremely philosophical religion. And that is why the present avatar of Buddhism, which is sanitized and suited to Western minds. One of my brother monks wrote me yesterday about someone that religion has become relaxation in the West. The idea being that we have forgotten that religion is about realization, and we are more into religion as relaxation. Because whenever Western world goes for religion, whether it be their church or whatever it be, for them it's just relaxation. But religion has to be a way of life, realization. This is something we are master at. So whenever you find that Western world has taken up, you become suspicious about it, because for them it's a relaxation. And then Swamiji says another very important statement. What a wonderful culture there must have been among the Aryans. He doesn't say Indians or Hindus. Aryans, he says. 2500 years ago, that is when Buddha was, to be able to grasp ideas. This is another phenomenal statement by Swamiji. When I say phenomenal, see, Swamiji was one of those rishis. Whatever he says, spiritual truth. And even if he's talking something about society, for example, when Swamiji had been to the West, and in one of his talks he said, the whole of Europe is sitting on powder keg, which may explode any minute. Swamiji passed away in 1902. Within 12 years, there was this First World War. Imagine the perception. He read some news about Russia and said, this state of affairs cannot go. There will be a revolution. And there was a revolution. So, when Swami Vivekananda says something about any of the issues, you have to keep in mind that his mind was so penetrating, so penetrating, so subtle, whether it be spirituality or be society or be human nature, it could go to that spot beyond which there lies nothing. And here he says, what a wonderful culture there must have been among the Aryans 2500 years ago to be able to grasp ideas. My dear audience, my dear viewers, can you imagine the pathetic plight we are in today, we in India? Just look around. Do you see any original thought coming out from India? Nothing. Any new invention? No. Any literary work that will be appreciated by other countries? No. You'll be surprised that there was a time I used to read lots of books. Now, last 2-3 years, I have not been reading books. I am no more interested. I'm now more interested in ideas. The literary works that have been appreciated, literary works of India that have been appreciated, are essentially the books that have been extremely critical and negative about India. I don't want to name the authors. I don't want to name the books. One of the very famous books, I remember, I was so excited to get that book because it had been awarded. And by the time I finished, I just had to throw it away in the dustbin. How can someone write so negatively about India? People have their dysenteries. People have their problems, their cough and this. Do you go on talking about it? No. Don't try to idealize the real. Never. There is reality in this world. There is some kind of reality, some painful reality in India. Never try to idealize it. When you are writing literature, you are idealizing something. Never do it. The goal is to bring the ideal down to the level of the real. You need to practice in your daily life what the highest ideals are. Instead, what you are doing is you are going in search of all the negative things that India has. Make a book out of it. And the world laughs at you and awards you with some prize. What a shameful thing. Now, every time I see that some Indian has been appreciated for writing, I conclude that there must be something very negative, extremely negative about India. Do you realize that in last 1000 years, Sanskrit literature has not produced one single masterpiece that would be translated in other languages and would be read by people all over the world, or if not all over the world, at least in some parts of the world? There is not a single book, at least not that I know of. And when I don't know of, the important thing in this is that I read books. I'm not just one of those tourists in the bookshops or tourists in a library. I go through books, I read books. Whatever great book Sanskrit has, starting from Vedas down to Panchatantra, they were all before that. Nothing. You call Sanskrit a great language, and now when I read these things, our politicians and policymakers talking about Sanskrit being computer language, I wonder that you are breaking all the limits of stupidity. The language, it has become so fossilized because of its grammar rules and because it's not allowing free flow of language. Those of you who are interested in, and those of you who can understand Hindi, please listen to my Valmiki Ramayan's talk. You'll see what a beautiful language Sanskrit is. Scholars took over the language and finished it. Think of the contributions that India has made in every field. We go on blaming this invasion, this culture, that culture. But whatever happened to the Indian masses or Indian intellectuals? We talk about the Brahmins. What has been their contribution last 1000 years as far as major literary work is concerned, major scientific innovation is concerned, or in any other field? Nothing. It's a big zero, big fat zero. If you are asked to name three books that you know of, which were written, say, 50 years ago in India, you won't be able to say. There is Swamiji, there is Gandhi's autobiography, etc. Maybe Jim Corbett. Of course, he was writing things when he was in India, and nothing else. Locals, yes, in local languages they are great. Get out of your local language, it's all blank. It's all blank. Shameful. Why? Because we have become effeminate. Mental eunuchs. These terms sound very painful, harsh, but these are facts. Where is the culture of ideas? I'll tell you one example. I think I'm not sure if I told that in one of these classes. Once I was, some years ago, I travel very less. I had to take a train to go to Delhi. And then I thought of reading some Hindi books because there was a time when I used to read them. So I went to one of those bookshops and said that, look, I don't have any idea if good books have been written in last 20 years. So could you please give me 2, 3 good books? I just want to read during my journey. Now the shopkeeper, or rather salesman, he told such a beautiful sentence. He says, Swamiji, where are the readers who can appreciate today? And then he named 3 famous poets of Hindi literature. Jaishankar Prasad and Sumitra Nandan Pant. No, like that. I was surprised. Imagine a salesperson on that railway bookshop, Mahadevi Burma. I still remember he took these 3 names. I was surprised. See, he must have studied in one of his village schools, and in those village schools he had read, and he could appreciate the great poets of Hindi literature. Of course, they may not be known by the outsiders, but in Hindi literature they're so well known. Is it? Where are the people who will appreciate this kind of writing? And he gave me 3, 4 books, and I purchased them. And my train started from Howrah station. I was going to Delhi. In less than 1 hour, I had completed all those 4 books, and I had thrown them outside the train. It was so disgusting. So disgusting. And he had given me the best ones. I don't mean to say that good books are not coming. They must be, because I'm not familiar with them, because I am not reading Hindi books anymore. What I mean to say that the books that I could not stand, 4 books in 1 hour, how disgusting the books must have been. And this is the kind of books on which the Hindi audience is today thriving. Where are the ideas? Where is the desire to uplift the culture? As a consequence, today we have to learn yoga from the Western media. Today we have to listen to Vedanta when somebody speaks in America. How unfortunate. If you go to Indian villages, particularly in the Hindi-speaking belt, you will still come across scholars, and because of those scholars, village scholars, you will find people in the whole of village who have some level of culture, I mean spiritual culture. And what has happened to our cities? Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Chennai, of course, there still is. Like if you go to these traditional families, whole of South India, they still maintain that culture. It's really heartening that if at all there is some Hindu culture, they have that. North India, it's all rotten. I mean big cities. I don't mean villages. I'll give you such a simple example. Yesterday I was talking about Somras, because Som has been extolled in the Vedas. And today's one gentleman writes on YouTube that Sri Ramakrishna had offered green coconut water and sugar to Mother Kali so that Kesab Chandra Sen improves. So is that Somras? Shocked. Green coconut water and sugar, you are calling it Somras. And when I had very specifically I had clarified that Somras came from some herb about which we now know nothing. It has been lost. And the juice coming out of it was offered to the gods, and who felt that it used to be life invigorating and health supplements. And yet you ask why? Because you're not able to take ideas. Who is responsible for this mess? Who? The leaders of the society. Masses, if they are not kept uplifted by the leaders, they will fall down. Do you come across any politician who speaks chaste Hindi? Do you come across any politician who speaks chaste English the way, say, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru used to talk or Gandhiji used to write? Do you come across? Do we know of such any politician who is a great writer? And if perchance there is someone who is intelligent, who is capable, he will be sidelined. Now, when Swamiji is talking about this, the Aryans could grasp these ideas. Not only that Buddha came up with these ideas, his followers could grasp it. If you read Bible, Jesus used his spiritual powers to uplift his disciples so that they could grasp. Not Buddha. He said, Atma Deepo Bhava. Be light unto yourself. I mean, when I read this kind of sentence, I wonder what Swamiji might have thought of today's India. How pathetic. It's not about, sometimes when your present is bleak and future is bleak, you turn towards the past and think that it was great. No, Swamiji is not talking in that sense. Indeed, whenever, I explain the Vedas or the Upanishads and Gita, I feel dumbfounded that our ancestors were mentally so agile that they could grasp these things. And today we are in such a mess that we need simplification and more simplification. Gita made easy, Upanishads made easy. Why made easy? They should be made complicated. If you are the evolved race, evolution generally means, as far as biology is concerned, we are moving forward. If we have evolved, and intellectually we have definitely evolved in the last 2500 years, we should be able to create more difficult work, more intense work than the Vedas and the Upanishads. Why we are not able to? Because instead of evolving, we have involved, we have gone back. There's simple books. I mean, I don't mean to blame anybody because I was like this for years and years together. I could not understand because I never cultured myself on those lines. Now, we are not talking about only about spirituality. We are talking about ideas. And that applies to science, art, music, everywhere. Everywhere you have only popularity, popular, 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 and pop. Pop and popular. Pop has come from popular. Well, that's what Swamiji says. Buddha was the only great Indian philosopher who would not recognize caste, and not one of his followers remains in India. Now, there is a very interesting contradiction that actually there are two great persons, Buddha and Guru Nanak. Both of them did not accept caste system as mandatory for religious practices and spiritual growth. Actually, Hinduism says that we have discussed our caste system at many different places. Caste comes in two formats. One is jati and there is varna. Jati is the family guild in which you are born. And varna is the broad classification of the jatis. And the idea was that don't you worry about which caste is better. By caste, I mean jati. Which family tradition is better or which guild is better, which work is better. Whatever you have in hand, you move ahead with that. Unfortunately, with time, this Varna system and Jati system, they got directly connected with privileges. And then it was cast in stone. Today, we cannot think outside it. Our constitution prohibits it. But when it comes to practices, you find that we are not able to get out of it. Now, when Swamiji says that, and not one of his followers remains in India, it doesn't mean to say that a caste system is the right thing, because Swamiji was not at all in favor of it, particularly the privileges associated with caste. What do you mean to say that somehow India rejected? India rejected Buddhism not because of the caste system, many other factors were there. All the other philosophers pandered more or less to the social prejudices, no matter how high they soared. Still, a bit of the vulture remained in them. This is a saying from Sri Ramakrishna, who used to say that scholars soar very high, but they are like vultures. Their sight is on carcasses. So, when you read these great masters, the great sages, you find that either they accepted the caste system the way it was, or they were silent about it. So, for example, there was Kabir Das, such a great poet. He was dead against caste system. He could do nothing about it. Somehow it remains, and it is very difficult. It's very difficult. There is that famous writer Alvin Toffler, who became very famous by his book The Third Wave. It is one of those futurology books. And there he explains how the first wave was about settling in villages, second wave was about industrialization and cities, and third wave is about electronic, what we are seeing today. And there he goes on discussing lots of things, and they're great work, because by studying the present in depth, he could conclude many things. When I had read that book, I was a bit skeptical about whatever he has been predicting. Is that going to be true? But see, I don't remember that book in detail now. It has worked out. Now, if you look at India, the effects of the second wave, industrialization, somehow it never reached India. We had India industrialization, we had lots of such things, but the caste system, like a virulent demon, it continued to be there. Wherever Indian goes, that caste goes. There are states where people cast their vote on castes, and there are other states where they engage in some other kind of caste prejudices. So now, when we had these great preachers and great philosophers, as Swamiji says, all other philosophers pandered. Now, when you look at Lord Buddha, of course, Jain was also like that, but because Mahavir Jain was not known in the West the way Buddha is known, Swamiji is talking more about Buddha. And philosophy of Buddha is much more complete than philosophy of the Jains. If you have some idea about this world of religions, about which I have been discussing, not my book in general, where religion is about realization by the sages, and then getting it implemented in the society. Now, every time you look at Lord Buddha, you get awestruck. The power that he must have wielded, the phenomenal power that he must have wielded, I mean spiritual power, where he's completely breaking down every kind of social prejudice. Every kind of social prejudice. He doesn't recognize caste. And he's not into marriages. Buddha's religion is essentially a monastic religion. Although it was later taken up by the householders, essentially it's a monastic religion. Name any kind of prejudice, social prejudices. Buddha just breaks it. It's amazing. What a colossus he must have been. Spiritual colossus. And then Swamiji again comes back to that scholarship. The ancient Hindus were wonderful scholars, veritable living encyclopedias. Indirectly, I knew of one gentleman who had the entire Mahabharata in his head, 100,000 verses, 1 lakh verses. You just say one verse, and from there he will just go on reciting. 100,000 verses. Can you imagine? Entire Mahabharata. And such people were all over the country. Whole of the Vedas, all the 4 Vedas, complete, full. And you, in South India, you will still, of course, in Varanasi also is there, but in South India, you also find it in family tradition. For example, that famous communist leader, EMS Namboodiripad, he knew Rig Veda by heart because his family, according to his family tradition, he had to learn that. Entire Rig Veda with 10,000 verses. 10,000. It's not a small number. You'll still come across some Brahmins, some scholars who carry a huge load of information in their head. But of course, this is slowly going down. The numbers is dwindling. I personally knew of someone who knew the entire complete works of Shakespeare, the complete works of Shakespeare, completely memorized. He knew the entire thing. He had the whole thing in his head. So Indians were like, walking encyclopedias. You ask of something. Once one of my elder monks, he passed away. He was narrating me one story. There was a time when he was in Varanasi, and then he used to go to one scholar, very elderly scholar, and used to ask questions. So this Swamiji, he had kind of studied scriptures. And that scholar, he was extremely neglected person. No one cared for him, and not even his family cared for him. And like most Brahmins, he was poor. So this Swamiji used to go to study to him and study with him. And there, whenever he asked some questions, some very intricate, unusual questions. So this elderly Brahmin, this incident must be of 1930s, 40s. So sit silently in absolute silence. Just go on thinking, and then slowly you say, Mere Guruji ek baar bole the. My teacher had once told. That means he would now go further back. That's before 1900. And they would say that, yes, there was a sentence, something like this. Something which you will not find in any of those books. That elderly Brahmin had heard that when he was a young student. And he remembers that. Just that he had to put some pressure on his mind. So this was something very natural in India. Now we have completely forgotten that art. So the ancient Hindus were wonderful scholars, veritable living encyclopedias, unthinkable. They said, knowledge in books and money in other people's hands is like no knowledge and no money at all. It's a very famous Sanskrit shlok. Shankara was regarded by many as an incarnation of Shiva. So this is Swamiji has been discussing various topics. And from there, the next day, that was Wednesday, July 10, Swamiji is now talking about assassins. Now, before what Swamiji has been talking, just let me give you a very brief idea about these assassins. Those of you who know something about Islam would know that Islam originated in Arabia, and from there it spread, and it spread fast. It went in various directions, and when it reached India, and that was pretty early, it did not take long. But the spread of Islam took time when it came to India and some other countries. Now, in Syria, there was a small sect of Shia. Those of you who know about Islam would know that there are many sects, but major are Shia and Sunni. So there was one sect of Shia. His name was Nizari Ismaili. Nizari Ismaili. He was sometime in the 11th century, and he felt two very important things. One was that people are moving away from true Islam. Now, that is a very serious problem with Islam. That very often somebody comes and thinks that he is moving away. People are moving away from Islam. And nowadays we have these Wahhabis. They have the same problem. So this kind of problem there have been in the past. And whenever they have this kind of problem, they get down to jihad. Whenever they feel Islam khatre mein hai, Islam is in danger, they always get back to this. And this is what these Nizaris did. And not much is known about this sect. It is believed that they were small sect in Syria, and they were living in mountains which were very well protected. It was very difficult to assess them, and killing them was practically impossible. So they wanted to live the way Quran asks them to do. And their number was pretty low. But to protect Islam and to protect themselves, they had to get into killings. And because they could not gather a huge army, so they became professional killers. And they become master killers. They were real master killers. Now, not much is known about them. They came to be known as assassins. Nowadays, this word has become quite popular, assassins. These assassins would target somebody, some king or some rich banker, rich merchant, and they never failed in their mission. There are many different ways, many different ways by which they could kill. And they succeeded in killing. Genghis Khan, when Genghis Khan started from Mongolia, he decided to destroy these assassins, and he succeeded. And the assassins also took revenge. Genghis Khan had created a system by which there was kind of mail chain. There is a specific word for that. There were posts every 2 kilometer or 5 kilometer, and from one post to the other, the messengers used to keep running all the time. So messages were used to run fast. Later, when the Mughals came to India, they also followed this practice. And if there was a message for the king, it used to be sent through that chain. So these messengers would go on horseback, reach the post, and there the person would be ready because they used to hear the sound. And in an unbroken speed, they used to reach maybe up to the king. And normally, the custom was that the message was given to the king from a distance. Now, in this case, Genghis Khan's son, there, he said that it is for the ears of the king. And he was carrying a very thin dagger, and he killed. Then Kublai Khan became the king. These assassins were masters, and they used every kind of weapon. That means swords and this kind of daggers, poisons, anything. Once they set their mind, their leader would say that this person has to die. And that's how the term assassinate and assassins has come. When the European scholars came, and like any other European scholar, they gave very bad name to these assassins. And one of those bad names was that actually the Persian word for assassins is assassin. Persian pronunciation is slightly different. So from there, this gentleman concluded that hashish, that is opium, they were, and these were basically opium eaters, hashish takers, and their leaders had kind of created an artificial heaven-like thing where they would live and they would enjoy the world, and they would feel that once they die in the field of their duty, because they would be serving the cause of their religion, they will be going to the heaven. We should be something like this. And when someone was tasked with that duty, he would know that if he succeeds, he gets back to the living paradise here on this earth. And if he dies, he reaches the heaven. No one knows how true that was, because this is the European scholars who have come up with these ideas. Those of you might have heard of Tarun Tejpal, who was a journalist. He wrote a very nice novel on the story of my assassin. And nice book, novel based on this idea of the assassins, where one of the assassins in present times maybe he has escaped and now he wants to know about the world, and then other assassins come, and he knows that he will be killed, and he knows how masterful these assassins are killing at someone. So that's a very, very interesting story that Tarun Tejpal wrote, and I was impressed. So Swamiji now comes down to Mohammedans and Islam. There are 65 million Mohammedans in India, and some of them Sufis. Sufis, those of you might be knowing, Sufis, the word Sufi itself has two different origins. One is Suf. Suf means wool. These people used to put on rough woolen clothes as a mark of their austerity. For example, we the monks, we put on this gerua cloth. And there is Suf was knowledge of God. Those who dedicated themselves entirely to the knowledge of God, they came to be known as Sufis. And every sect has to have its divine origin. So Sufis say that there used to be some mystics, some sadhaka in our tradition, the way we use the term sadhaka, during Prophet Muhammad's time, who used to be engrossed in the thought of God and singing about God. But they were a very private group. And their teaching goes from teacher to the disciple, and they call it silsila. So in Sufism, silsila is very important. The knowledge of the divine has to come through the tradition of guru and disciple. Now, this is very similar to Vedanta or Hindu tradition. And that is why the Orthodox Muslims, they don't accept Sufism as Islam. And Sufism has a lot of Shia influence on them, not Sunni influence. Now, Sufis identify man with God, and through them, this idea came into Europe. They say, I am the truth, an Allah Haq. There are many stories about these Sufi saints who believed, like Mansur was there, Rabaya was there. There are many. And Sufis feel that man is one with God. Now, this goes, well, they say that this is in Quran, this has come from Prophet Muhammad, and it was this wisdom was meant for chosen few. But the Orthodox Muslims don't accept them. And that's why those of you who read newspapers about Pakistan will see that very often there are attacks on Sufi shrines. But they have an esoteric as well as an exoteric doctrine, although Muhammad himself did not hold it. Esoteric is when it goes privately from some guru to disciple. And there is exoteric, something which comes out. So Swamiji says that Muhammad himself did not hold it, but Sufis say that, well, this was practiced in the time of Prophet Muhammad himself. So Hashish eaters, has become our word assassin because an old sect of Mohammedans killed non-believers as a part of its creed. Now, coming back to that, when Swamiji is talking about it, assassin, he uses a Persian word. So they were believed to be hashish eater because of these words, hashash hashin. Actually, this is a Persian word. Now, a pitcher of water has to be present in the Mohammedan worship as a symbol of God filling the universe. Now, well, Swamiji says that, and not everybody accepts this one. Sometimes they say that this is because they need to do wuzu to cleanse themselves. The Hindus believe that there will be 10 divine incarnations. Nine have been, and the 10th is still to come. So Swamiji is talking about various topics. So he began with Buddhism, and he's talking about Shankaracharya, he's talking about the ancient Brahmins, and from there he's talking about Islam, and from there he's talking about the 10 incarnations. And from there, that very day, he starts discussing on Shankaracharya, how he looks at the Vedas, how he looks at reasoning. Our time is nearly up, so we stop here because this is a topic that requires time. Thank you very much. Stay well, stay safe. Thank you.